Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Flashback Horror Movie Podcast. We are back and better than ever. Today, I have with me, obviously, the Pajama Pants player, John Grande. What's going on, John?
What's going on, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Been a little hectic. We had some technical difficulties with the last episode, but we finally got that all figured out, and it should be up and ready to listen to if anybody out there hasn't had a chance. We're obviously doing the top 10 horror movie performances of all time, and last week we did numbers 10 through 6, and this week we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're doing number 5 through number 1. Are you ready to do it?
Hells yeah, man!
Cool.
I'm stoked.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see what we got coming up in the in our top 5s. Obviously, anybody out there who listened to 10 through 6, let us know what you think of our picks. Let us know, rebuke us a little bit if you want. If you disagree with what we had to say last week, let us know what your picks were. I haven't had a chance. We kind of talked about this a little bit. I haven't had a chance to check out anything this week. I did actually. The only thing I watched this week was The Lost Boys for the 30th anniversary. This year is the 30th anniversary of the release of The Lost Boys. I don't know if we've ever talked about that. Are you a fan of that movie?
I'm a fan of The Lost Boys. I don't think I'm as big of a fan as most people because I didn't grow up with that movie. I only saw it actually about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
But I enjoyed it for what it was. It's definitely not a nostalgic one for me because
Sure.
Obviously I didn't see it when I was a kid. And I know how nostalgic it is. Even some people my age, like, oh, it's my favorite movie I saw when I was a kid, and it was, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't get that special nostalgic feel when I watched it the very first time. But I did really like it a lot.
Yeah, I think that movie is, as much as I love that movie, I definitely think I don't want to say it's dated, but for back then when it came out, it was it's kind of a hot topic for fashion. It was kind of a new thing for the vampire genre. I don't know if you call it a genre, you know what I mean? And the people were, it was cool. Obviously, Kiefer Sutherland was in it, and Jamie Gertz, and Jason Patric, and the late Corey Haim. So a lot of things came together. It's kind of a perfect storm of things to happen. 87 was a little bit later in the decade. So we needed something in the genre that was more than just independent and straight to video. So I think Joel Schumacher did that with that movie. So I really enjoy the movie, but I definitely would get that that some people it's not that big of a deal to them. It's a good movie, but it's not as big a deal to people who grew up in the 80s. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it. Obviously, I've seen it a million times, but it was cool to go back and watch it and see Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, which back in the late 80s they were hot as a duo together, in movies. So, and obviously, like I said, Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patric, all the chicks dug those guys. So, but yeah, it's a fantastic movie. Anybody who hasn't seen it, obviously, go ahead and check it out. I don't think you got a chance to watch anything, but was there anything that you did this week horror related that was cool? I know you're kind of getting ready to go back to school, right?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go back to school, unfortunately.
Yeah, no doubt, right?
But I kind of hung out with my friends for one final time before some of them went away. Yeah, really haven't been doing much movie watching. But I did a couple nights ago before I went to bed. I watched Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Oh wow, nice.
And it was only a second time watch for me. I haven't seen that movie as much as most. And honestly, it's because it's so goddamn hardcore. Like
Dark,
it's definitely a hard flick to get through. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly it's a very abstract film, and it kind of Michael Rooker in it is great, but I always kind of was more afraid of the Tom Towles character.
Oh, no doubt.
Like, he's just super, like, he has no fucking remorse. like Michael Rooker, like, there's a point where he's like, respect your sister and respect your lady and whatever. Like, he'll tell you to respect it. Tom Towles just had no, like, upside to him. That guy was just pure evil, man.
Yeah, no,
he scared the crap out of me in that movie.
Yeah, he played Otis Toole, kind of the serial killer sidekick, right?
I don't know that's basically what he was.
Yeah. But that movie is dark, man. I own it on Blu-ray, and I think I've only seen it on the Blu-ray one time because I feel the same way you do. It's really like you said, dark. It's I don't know. It's about a real life serial killer, Henry Lee Lucas, and it's based on a true story. And that movie sat on the shelves for, I don't know, like 5 years before they released it. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh no, I never knew that.
Yeah, it sat on the shelf for a long time, and I think because it was so dark. I mean, who would want to touch that? You know what I mean? Especially when it back in the late '80s when it was made. So, but yeah, that's a really good movie. Anybody who's into serial killers, and that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I used to read about serial killers all the time. Like in my teens and stuff. And Henry Lucas was a bad son of a bitch. You know what I mean? He claims to have killed like 250 women, but I think they could only verify like 54 or so. I don't know what the numbers were. The numbers were very weird, but they say he could have killed upwards of 250 people. That's pretty nuts. He'd be the most prolific serial killer of all time if that was the case, obviously.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, yeah, bringing up that movie's kind of a downer, isn't it? I know exactly what you mean. So, but yeah, I guess we should just jump into it, man. Do you want me to start, or you want to start with your number 5?
Well, I started last week,
okay.
So do you want to start this week?
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and start with a clip here real quick.
Nice.
Get away from her, you bitch!
And obviously that's kind of a quick clip there, and obviously anybody who knows horror knows who that is, and that's Sigourney Weaver playing Ellen Ripley in the original Alien movie. This character, and for me personally, for when I grew up and when I started watching horror films, these were two very early films that I'm going to talk about here. But the character of Ellen Ripley and Alice from Friday the 13th were the first women I remember seeing that were like some badass characters, you know what I mean, who could really take care of themselves. I think this movie, first of all, this movie's a classic. It's got to be in my top 3 movies of all time. But the thing about this character in particular is that she starts out as a secondary character, I think. Do you feel that way about that character?
Absolutely. She's definitely not, like, when the movie starts, you don't think, oh, there's your heroine right there. Like,
exactly.
it's very laid back and subtle. You don't really know who's going to be the person to step up and be that kind of lead hero / heroine.
Right. And I think that as this movie goes on, and this is what makes the performance and the character so great, is that she is kind of forced into a leadership role that she doesn't want. And I think maybe this may be any great character in movie history. They're forced into this role that they really don't want to be put in, and they have to overcome the obstacles. And that's what I love about this character. She, first of all, like I said, she's kind of a timid, maybe even a little bit shy, a little backward character, and she has to come into her own and kick ass in the end. And that's why I thought Sigourney Weaver did a really, really good job. I know, Sigourney Weaver is one of those actresses that people either love or hate for some reason. I don't quite understand it, but I think that this character is one of the best characters, especially, well, maybe the best woman character in my film history. You know what I mean? And that's one of the reasons that I love her so much, is she really takes a hold of this character, and she plays it to a T from the beginning to the end. She's quiet and subdued at the beginning, and then she has to kick ass in the end. And I know that my clip is obviously from Aliens, but I just want people to know. Isn't it? Is that from Aliens? I'm going nuts.
That's from, it's the very end of Aliens.
That's what I thought. So I do know that. So anybody who out there who wants to correct me, you're more than welcome to. But I do know that. But anyway, so that's how I feel about this character. I feel like it's probably one of the strongest women characters of all time. So for me, that really that kind of seals the deal right there. What do you think? I know you're a fan of the movie, but what do you think about the character?
I love the character. I think Sigourney Weaver was one of the better. I like. It's hard for me to say that she's a final girl, even though she pretty much is.
Right.
It's weird because I don't consider the original Alien really a slasher film. Like, it's more of a atmospheric, and it's dark and it's gritty. Mm-hmm. I think Aliens is more of a slasher film than Alien. But I think in a lot of ways, Ripley is just a great character because she's the only one that that whole movie Alien is really trying to say is that we have to communicate with each other if we want to get out of this situation alive. And it's a movie full of miscommunication. It's very similar in and of the fact of what George Romero was trying to say about zombies. It's not that the zombies win. It's not that the alien wins. It's that we lose.
Right.
It's that we can't cope together or communicate to get a way out of this situation. And it's like Ripley is the only one that's kind of trying to hear everybody out, and she's also trying to think for herself, because I think she realizes like these people are just useless. They're not. One wants to do this, one wants to do that, one wants to do another thing.
Right.
And instead, they should all come up with a game plan and try to work things out, but they can't do it in the end because they're either too stupid, too stubborn, or
Right.
there's just 100 different reasons, or they're getting their head chopped off by the alien, or
right.
they're getting taken over and having aliens burst out of their chest. But I think the Ripley character was great because she was really on her own. I mean,
Right.
she had no, just everything about that character was just strong and admirable, and she's just a great performance. I really like Sigourney Weaver as an actress, and I think this movie really did make her career.
Oh yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And when you start watching this movie, you think, okay, well, Tom Skerritt's character Dallas is going to be the main character, and then sure enough, he dies pretty early on. I mean, in the whole arc of the movie. But then she has to take over, and I think you're right. I think that she's the only one with her head on straight. Everybody else is worried about all the worried about money, and they're trying to do things separately, and she's the one that has to kind of bring them together to lead them through the problem. So yeah, I like I said, this is a really, really great movie. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that agree with me, or that disagree with me, but I think that this movie is really, really one of the great sci-fi horror classics of all time, and I think she really deserves a place on this list for sure.
I totally agree. I think she absolutely belongs on this list.
Cool. So let's go ahead and move on to your number 5. What do you got for me?
All right, at number 5, I actually have yet another female actress,
Nice.
but I bet you that you don't know who it is. It
man.
is Miss Isabel Adjani from the 1981 horror film Possession.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. Cool.
Now, this is a movie I only saw about 2 to 3 years ago, and I've only seen it the one time. I don't own this one, unfortunately. It goes for like stupid money online. Like it literally, I think the DVD is over $60. I couldn't even imagine what the Blu-ray would be. And I know there's all sorts of versions of this. I watched the uncut version. When I watched it, I looked it up and I found the uncut version. So, but I'll be honest, this movie is very powerful in my opinion. It's got a lot of good, strong performances in it, and it's basically from the two leads, Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani. But what makes her performance stand out to me is just it's the title of the movie actually that always stood out to me in her performance. It's the whole movie is she's being possessed by this thing that she's I'll give people a little bit of a rundown of the film that have not heard of this one, because I know this one's a little bit more obscure. It's basically about Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani, and you can see that they're husband and wife, but you can also see that their marriage is kind of falling apart. And it's actually not like slowly, it's actually like rapidly falling apart. Right as the movie opens, you know that their marriage is in turmoil. And every now and again, she kind of disappears and goes somewhere. And Sam Neill's like, are you going to see your lover? And she's like, yeah, I am going to see my lover. And then they have some insane screaming matches, between husband and wife, and the poor kid is just in the back room and he's like kind of all upset. And I like that the kind of matches that they have, because they're both really powerful actors, and they're very strong in their performances here, because it feels very realistic. They're both kind of teary-eyed when they're yelling at one another, and I like some of the line deliveries here. I mean, it's really good stuff. And basically, as more and more stuff begins to unfold, you realize that Isabel Adjani is actually having an affair with some kind of Lovecraftian-like monster.
Oh wow!
And
Okay.
it's bizarre. Like when you see it, you'll just I didn't laugh at all. Actually, like I thought it was kind of insanely scary. And just the way she looks at it, and the way some of her facial expressions, and like there's one point where they insinuate that she had a miscarriage. This thing got her pregnant, and she had a miscarriage, and she's in this subway, and there's this insane scene. It literally goes on for like 3.5 minutes where she's just screaming her head off, and there's like ooze dripping down her legs and out of her hair and everywhere. And it's like one of the most creepy ass scenes I've ever seen. Like it's so
That's
like
crazy.
it's bizarre, and she does such a phenomenal job in this movie. She looked she was a very beautiful woman to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think, like what I was saying before about the title, you know, coming full circle with this, I don't think this movie is about the possession of what another person or somebody that you're cheating on your partner with has over you. I think this is like kind of a metaphor for the possession that somebody holds on you that you kind of want to get away from. It's the possession of a broken marriage. And this woman is really feels possessed over what Sam Neill wants her to come back, and wants things to be normal again, and wants the family to, you know, strive above, you know, rise above this. And the problem at the end of the day is that it absolutely can't. You know, there's too many problems. There's too many, you know, things that didn't go right. And this woman is just compelled to, you know, in the middle of the day, just go to the middle of, I think it's Germany in the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And she just, you know, have sex with this crazy monster thing. So I don't know. I just always thought her performance was really good. There's a lot of good standout scenes. The subway one probably being the best. But what did you think about this one, man?
Well, I have to be honest. I've never seen it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I have heard of it. I have, you know, I mean, I'm familiar with the movie. Like, you know, I've seen the, you know, like you said, the Blu-ray is going for just, I mean, there's a steelbook out there that's probably going for over $100. It's supposed to be, you know, the holy grail for this movie. It got all the information and stuff in it, but I have never seen this movie. And I'm a big Sam Neill guy. I mean, I love, you know, obviously Jurassic Park, and In the Mouth of Madness, you know, so I love Sam Neill, and I can't tell you, I can't give you a reason. Well, I've never seen this movie. You know what I mean? I can't say, oh, well, I heard it was bad, or, you know, because I've never heard anything but good, interesting things about it, but I just have never seen it. So I'm going to have to hold off, man. I'm definitely going to have to watch it so that I can give an opinion on the next episode, because, like I said, I haven't heard. I'm not sure. It's just kind of it seems to me to be, you know, a little bit of an enigma. You know what I mean? It's very, like you were saying, you know, it doesn't kind of fit into a genre. You know what I mean? So, you know, the whole Lovecraftian issue, maybe people don't know how to explain it or something, but I don't know. I've never sat down and watched that movie. So, I guess I'm exposed. I'm not that great horror fan everybody thinks, but no, I don't know. Again, I don't know exactly why. And, you know, it can't be for the performances. I mean, obviously, you know, I've seen her 1,000 times. She's beautiful. I love Sam Neill. I don't really know anything else that she's acted in, because she is French. So most of her movies are in, you know, they're from France, and, you know, I don't know how many are actually, you know, released here, you know, but so, like I said, I can't blame it on that. It's just one of those ones that has slipped by me. So I'll have to hold my opinion until I actually watch it. Sorry. I know that's kind of weak.
Oh,
right? Nothing
to be sorry about at all. I mean, I'm surprised there's one I've seen that you haven't. That's pretty crazy.
Well, yep, mark that one. That's the one. That's the first one right there. We'll see if there's any more. I'm sure you've seen some stuff I haven't seen. So,
yeah, I think the last episode we were talking about whatever happened to Baby Jane. You had never seen.
Yeah, I've never seen that either. So that's two on my list that I haven't had a chance to watch. So, but I'm definitely going to do that. So, I guess, because of my lack of knowledge, we should just move on to number 4. and
yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah, and for me, it's this. We'll go with this right here.
Do you know what you look like to me with your good bag and your cheap shoes? You look like a rube. A well-scrubbed, hustling rube with a little taste. Good nutrition's giving you some length of bone, but you're not more than one generation from poor white trash, are you, Agent Starling? And that accent you've tried so desperately to shed, pure West Virginia. What does your father do? Is he a coal miner? Does he stink of the land? You know how quickly the boys found you, all those tedious, sticky fumblings in the backseats of cars, while you could only dream of getting out, getting anywhere, getting all the way to the end of the line.
You see a lot, Doctor. When are you strong enough to point that high-powered perception at yourself? What about it? Why don't you look at yourself and write down what you see? Maybe you're right to.
So, obviously, that is the great Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster from Silence of the Lambs. Now, I know a lot of people, I might get some flack because a lot of people don't consider Silence of the Lambs a horror movie, but I absolutely do. And I was thinking about, we were making these lists, and I was thinking, man, well, Anthony Hopkins has to be on this list. I mean, he absolutely, for me, has to be on this list. And I thought, you know what? That character is made, and he makes that movie, don't get me wrong, but I think Jodie Foster deserves to be alongside him there, because if it wasn't for the type of character she was, he wouldn't have been able to be the type of character he was. So I made it both. I made it Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster, obviously playing Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling, and from the Silence of the Lambs. I think that this movie is very, very similar to what Robert Englund did with Freddy Krueger. And what I mean by that is that everyone knows who Hannibal Lecter is for sure. And, you could ask kids nowadays and they know what Silence of the Lambs is. So that, for me, it was made by the characters. You know what I mean? Obviously, the topic was great, but it's, those types of topics, it's been done before. It's not like, he was breaking some serious ground there. But I think these characters is what really sent this, sky high, and that's why it was the number one thriller that year. They called it a thriller, obviously, and it made so much money, and people were talking about it. And it's this type of thing, it reminds me of, the character of Jason Voorhees. These, especially Hannibal Lecter, he goes on and on and on, no matter what. They could never make another movie again, and people, 100 years from now would know who Hannibal Lecter was. At least that's the way I feel. So I think that he deserves a lot of that credit, along with Jodie Foster. I honestly do feel like she should, because of the character interaction, she deserves to be in there. But the character of Hannibal Lecter, for sure, is one of those ones that will continue on forever. What do you think?
I agree 100%. I think Hannibal Lecter is one of those characters that comes along, and it's very few and far between kind of character where it just changes everything. It changes the game, and it's like automatically classic. Like right. It's an instant classic. Whenever you see whoever sees Silence of the Lambs for the first time, like when they see it, they know that this is an instant classic, and Anthony Hopkins is going to be remembered forever. And it's like one of those things where it's just that opening scene where she enters that kind of like, I guess prison kind of thing. Mm-hmm. She goes under the what would you even call that?
Where they house them? Is that what you mean? Yeah, I would consider it a mental hospital, really.
Okay, yeah. So when she visits the mental hospital, and you first see him, and they lock eyes. They had a great screen chemistry, those two, and I actually agree with you 100%. Like I remember saying that as when I first saw it. Years back, I said Jodie Foster was just as important as Anthony Hopkins, if not more important in that movie, because they really had an undeniable chemistry, and I think that Jodie Foster was truly missed in the sequel when they made yes. Hannibal.
Absolutely.
Julianne Moore I like Julianne
sure,
Moore, but
sure.
she just didn't. It was just not the same. It was like you were missing that ingredient that made Hannibal Lecter even more menacing. And right. I like there's one point where I think she's asking her, like one of her friends is asking her, do you think he'd kill you since he got out? And she goes, no, I think he'd think that would be disrespectful in a way. It's weird. And I just remember just laughing my ass off to that part. I was just like, yo, that is a chemistry bond.
Absolutely.
That he doesn't want to kill you, even though he's a psychopathic, right. Murderer that eats people, that he would find that disrespectful. So right. There's certainly some kind of class when it comes to Hannibal Lecter, but I think it's honestly one of the great horror movie villains of all time, and definitely a horror icon. I would say that the scene where they roll him up and they have him wearing the mask over his mouth.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's just some of the most iconic, shots and scenes in horror movie history. I absolutely love Silence of the Lambs, and I love both Foster and Anthony Hopkins in it.
Nice. Yeah, I remember watching that movie, and you remember when he attacks the guards when they have him in the cage. And, and I mean, I've seen a lot of horror movies that, gore, and all, but that movie, I mean, that kind of was shocking to me, watching that. So, that movie did, you're talking about, what Jodie Foster said, and that was a lot of really good writing, I think, in that movie. And I think that they just brought it to life. So yeah, those are my number 4s. So what's next on your list for me?
Alrighty, at number 4, it is the great Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Wait. Hold on a second.
Oh, you got a clip?
Heck yeah.
I'm not gonna hurt you. Stay away from me! Wendy! Stay away! Darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
And we're gonna include this because this is my number 3.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just do them together.
This is the second pick now. With Kathy Bates coming up on mine.
Nice.
This is the second one we've had in common thus far. But I think we both can agree that Jack Nicholson's performance in this movie is one of the greatest in the history of horror movie cinema.
Absolutely.
And his portrayal of Jack Torrance and just some of the crazy ass scenes that he's in this movie, and some of the facial expressions. Like the one I love the most is, I think we've talked about this in the past, is the one at the bar when he's alone for a while, and you can see how kind of slowly mad he's going, and then he goes, "Hi, Lord, a little slow tonight," and then it's that classic Jack Nicholson laugh, and he looks up, and there's a bartender there now, and he's like, "What'll it be, sir?" And it's like, oh my god, it always creeped me out, like how that guy just pops up out of nowhere. Because nothing really too supernatural other than some of the the two twins that the son sees in that movie happens to that point, and it's just when you see that bartender, you just go, oh my god, like what's going on right now? Did I miss something? Was that guy there before?
Right.
I remember as a kid I rewound it a couple times. It's like, guys, like that guy wasn't there before. This just blew my mind, but. I mean, you can't get over the greatness of Jack Nicholson in this movie. The scene where he is just on the typewriter, you could see slowly losing his shit. And when Wendy comes in and she's like, "How's it going, hon?" And he's like, "You're distracting me." And he starts hitting himself. He's like, "Whenever you hear this," and he's like typing. He's like, "That means I'm typing and I'm working. So don't fucking come in here, you're distracting me." And he's like, "When I'm in here, you get the fuck out, okay?" And it's so, he just snaps at her for no reason. Like, she's being all friendly and nice. "You want a sandwich?" And then he's just like, "Get the fuck out of here, you're fucking distracting me." And it's just like, oh my god, like what is happening to this guy? And it's that slow descent into madness that we all have come to know and love about this movie. And Jack Nicholson, honestly, I mean, nobody could have done it better. Really, nobody could have done it better. I mean, the "Here's Johnny" and the facial expressions and the complete just insanity that ensues from his character in this movie is just pure brilliance. And I think it's one of, if not Jack Nicholson's best performance.
Oh yeah, listen, Nicholson, I have to tell you, for me, he hasn't worked in such a long time. Okay. But for me, he's the best actor of all time. I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts. No one's even close, in my opinion. Chinatown and Terms of Endearment. I mean, just, what's the one where he plays the crazy old guy? And I can't remember. But anyways.
About Schmidt?
Oh, that's another one. That's another. But you know what I hated about that movie is we got to see Annie Wilkes naked. That was ridiculous. Anyways, but yeah, I think that the scene you talked about where she comes in and he just starts to lose his shit. Right up to that point, he's been a pretty reasonable person, and he's been a he's been a regular husband and a dad, but she says, "Hey, how's things going?" And he just starts, the tirade and the foul language, the fucks, and he just kind of goes off. And there's another scene where he's sitting in the chair and they zoom in, and he's just got this look on his face, like there's no muscles in his face. His eyes are open, his mouth's open, and he's just staring off into space. I mean, what an unbelievable job. And again, this in this horror movie, for a lot of people, is a career-defining role. You know what I mean? Now, I'm sure there'd be people to argue Chinatown, but for a lot of people, this is what they remember him for. And I think that's what's going to, again, it's going to go on for a long, long time where people remember Jack Nicholson in this role. And, have you ever read the book? I've never read the book.
I've never read the book.
Yeah,
no.
I keep saying, hey, you got to read the book. But man, I'll tell you what. And I know, supposedly King hates it and everything. But man, oh man, him in this movie is what made this movie. I really think. And again, it's just a career defining thing for me. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everybody will remember that. So yeah, so fantastic. I mean, anybody who hasn't seen The Shining definitely needs to go check it out. And also, there's a documentary called Room 237. If you have seen it, if you haven't seen the documentary, it's really, really interesting. It's not about Nicholson himself, but it's about the making of the movie and, things like that. So,
yeah, I think that his whole, you can't go to a horror movie convention without seeing the artwork of his face in the door.
Exactly.
And it's just one of the most, it's scary how sickening the look on his face is and how much he's enjoying, scaring and terrorizing his wife and child. It's a wonderfully played role, man. I only believe Jack Nicholson could have played because it was just totally perfect timing. It was the perfect director and it was the perfect lead actor to kind of carry what I would think would be. I always thought Shelley Duvall was kind of bad in the film. I never minded the little boy. Granted, I don't think he had all that much to do other than kind of look terrified at points.
Slobber once or twice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And he's just, I don't know. I just think Jack Nicholson really, because Shelley Duvall was, I think, really bad in that movie. But Jack Nicholson's performance just it annexes everything else out. It's just perfection.
I agree. Well, since that's my number 3, I guess we should just move on to your number 3. We both agree that Jack Nicholson is the shit.
I concur, my man. Okay, so we're gonna go 2 in a row here. Which again, this is gonna be this may be our last double, so nobody worry. I think numbers 1 and 2 I think are gonna be different. But I had Kathy Bates in Misery as Annie Wilkes, who we talked about.
Oh, sorry.
So.
I stood right up and started shouting. This isn't what happened last week. Have you all got amnesia? They just cheated us. This isn't fair. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodie car.
Sorry, I had my finger over the screen and I accidentally touched it. My bad. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Hey, anytime Annie Wilkes wants to interrupt me, she can. All right. Because I'm out of my cocky-doodie mind.
Right, right.
There's just, we talked about it a lot in the last episode, but I just absolutely think Kathy Bates just hit it out of the park in this movie and ran and caught the ball herself. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Yeah. It's scary. It's funny. It's quirky. The character doesn't curse. She's super moral, but at the same time, she's got this insane past that James Caan finds in these scrapbooks. And I thought another thing the one thing we didn't talk about was how she knew where everything in the house was and what direction it was pointing in. There's a point where James Caan breaks out, and it's a super intense scene that Rob Reiner, he really, brings out the tension and suspense in the scene where James Caan gets out of the room and he's, wheelchairing around the house, and he accidentally bumps into this table, and this little, ceramic penguin falls and hits the ground.
That's what it was, a penguin. I forgot.
Yeah, and he picks it up and he puts it back on the table. And then, it's later in the movie. It's, after he got back in the bed, and she comes in. She goes, "All right, how are you getting out?" And he's like, "What do you mean, Annie?" He's trying to be all buddy with her. Right. And she goes, "What are you kidding?" She's like, "I know you've been out." She's like, "My penguin on my night table always points due south." And I just
what?
Yeah,
right.
I just remember when I first heard that, I was like, "What an insane bitch! She knows which way her goddamn penguin is facing on her night table." Yeah. I mean, that is a crazy bitch.
Don't you think that? Obviously up to this point, she's a little Looney Tune. But that one scene where she says, you know, it always points due south. You're like, oh my God, this bitch is another level. You know what I mean? It takes you even deeper into who she is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Very, very interesting.
Definitely.
Very
I
interesting.
totally agree. I think Kathy Bates is just she's a different kind of a lunatic in this movie. I agree. It's like it's not even you can't even just call her a lunatic because that would be short crediting how crazy she is.
Right.
And it's like it's so amazing because she's so sweet at first.
Right.
And she's playing such a complete like bullshit, you know, nice, sweet, caring lady. And then her true colors start to show as soon as she reads Misery, and she's like, she can't be dead, and she just like rushes them and. Oh, man, it's just some good stuff. And I like towards the end where James Caan is trying to force her to eat the pages.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
He's like, you like it so much? Eat it! And he shoves it in her mouth. I remember always being like, holy shit, this is an insane movie.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Like Stephen King, I mean, I think, you know, another really cool thing is that Rob Reiner did this film. You know, he did Stand By Me. And he did this movie, too. So, you know what I mean? It comes from a different place when somebody like that directs this movie. And I think that maybe that's what made it so special. What do you think?
I think so, too. I think Rob Reiner's one of those directors that I always kind of felt was a little bit underrated. I think that he's been good. He's really, most of the movies he's made have been very, very good and quality.
Yeah.
I think people would probably... I think Stand By Me is probably his best film.
Yeah.
But I like that around this time, he really made one movie in every genre. Like, he made a kind of mockumentary comedy with This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
And then he made a great coming-of-age, probably my favorite coming-of-age movie in Stand By Me.
Yeah,
I believe he made When Harry Met Sally the year before this. I may be leaving one or two out. I'm not so caught up to date on my Rob Reiner cinema, if you will.
Right.
And then he tapped into the horror genre with this movie. I mean, that's you know 3 or 4 different genres and 3 or 4 different, I think, classics. Really, I mean, Stand By Me is a classic. Oh, yeah. This Is Spinal Tap is a classic, and I think a lot of people consider When Harry Met Sally to be a classic. I think he's a very, very underrated filmmaker, if I could be so bold, because I think there's just something about his direction, his style, that I just always been a big fan of. And I think that it was important to have him be the one to direct this movie because I don't know, who knows if Kathy Bates would have gave the same performance with a different director? Who knows if Kathy Bates would have gotten the role? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think the director really did serve a big purpose here, and I think he did a great job.
Yeah, he also did The Princess Bride, which is another
Yes,
classic.
that was the one I was missing.
And A Few Good Men, which is, that's a classic movie. Another, Nicholson. We were talking about Nicholson just a minute ago.
And all those movies are super memorable and super well liked. I mean, he went on a streak of like 7 straight movies that were just great.
Yeah, and then he just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, he fell off like he made some kind of kids film, I think, with Elijah Wood. And it just completely bombed. It was just a complete flop, and like I don't think he ever recovered from that.
Yeah, he's pretty good. But I guess Annie Wilkes. Annie Wilkes. Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes. We obviously both agree that that's one of the top 10 of all time for sure too. And I'm sure that if a lot of people, I think that unfortunately the movie itself, and I can't tell you exactly why, isn't as memorable to people as the character. Does that make any sense? So I feel like it may be falling by the wayside. Everybody knows The Shining. Everybody knows, Anthony Hopkins is Hannibal Lecter. You know what I'm saying? But and they still love the movie. But this movie, it's kind of getting hidden for some reason, and I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because it's not very gory, or you know what I mean. I don't know. What do you think? Do you feel that way too?
I agree with you. I think it is unfortunately fallen by the wayside, but I think it's just one of those movies that I always really, really liked it. I think it's honestly probably one of my favorite Stephen King adaptation films. And I always just thought it was a great movie as well, but I think a lot of people more so than the movie remember her. I think you were even saying this in the last episode. It wasn't "Did you see Misery?" It was "Did you see Kathy Bates?"
Exactly.
Performance, and that's the most memorable thing about it, and it's kind of bittersweet because it's great, sweet in and of the fact that how great Kathy Bates was.
Right.
But then it's kind of bittersweet because people don't really remember how great of a movie Misery truly was. And I agree with you. I think it is going to fall by the wayside eventually, where it's like to the point where people don't really remember the movie. But I think they'll always remember Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes. I think that's one of the most it's actually top 3. We're cracked top 3 now.
Yeah, no
so Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes is the number 3 choice on my list, and
Cool.
I think she's well deserving of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, well, I guess we're going to move into number 2.
The top 2.
Yeah, this is it's going to get interesting. And I think you may be surprised at my pick, so I'll go ahead.
I'm excited.
I'll go ahead and play this.
You all know me. Know how I earn a living. I'll catch this bird for you, but it ain't gonna be easy. Bad fish. Not like going down the pond chasing bluegills or tommycods. This shark, swallow you whole. Shaking, tenderizing, down you go. And we gotta do it quick. I don't bring back the tourists. That'll put all your businesses on a paying basis. But it's not going to be pleasant. I value my neck a lot more than $3,000, Chief. I'll find him for 3, but I'll catch him and kill him for 10. And you got to make up your minds. You want to stay alive and ante up? You want to play it cheap? Be on welfare the whole winter. I don't want no volunteers. I don't want no mates. There's too many captains on this island. $10,000 for me by myself. For that, you get the head, the tail,
the whole
damn thing.
All right. Obviously, you probably knew that was going to be here somewhere, but I thought you might be surprised that it was number 2.
I am surprised that it's number 2. I thought for sure that was going to be number 1. How about before we do reveal our number 1s, we'll take one last guess at what our number 1s possibly could be.
Man, okay. All right. Yeah, that's cool.
Now continue with the love of Mr. Shaw.
Sure. Well, for some reason, and I think I've, obviously since we've been doing this, I've, been thinking about my choices and why I chose them. I think that, first of all, this character really, this, it really has a place in my heart as a character. I honestly think, so it's surprising that I put it at number 2, but we'll talk about my number 1 later. This is probably my favorite performance of any actor in any genre ever. And I thought about this, and I thought, it kind of reminds me of my grandfather, who was in World War II. And, he had a lot of stories. He was torpedoed, and they, he talks about the Indianapolis and all that kind of stuff, and in the movie. So my grandfather was torpedoed and was in the water, and so on and so forth. So he was in Guadalcanal during the Battle of Guadalcanal and all that kind of stuff. So there's maybe that's part of the reason, but I really think that the performance here is top notch, better than Nicholson. Obviously, that's why he's number 2. I just love this character, man. I love everything about him. I love the fact that he's a real dude. We all, if you've been alive any amount of time, we all know somebody like this. Somebody who can be a dick at 1 minute, but yet can hold your attention, and you can have a lot of empathy for somebody in the next minute. We've all known somebody like that. We've all known dickheads, and we've all known people that were really interesting people, but we didn't know a lot of dickheads who were interesting. And I think that's who this character is. Every time I watch this movie and he goes through that Indianapolis story, I want to be there. You know what I mean? I want to be sitting next to these guys talking about the same things that they're talking about, or just listening to their stories, And I think that Robert Shaw was a very, very difficult man to deal with, I'm sure, from what I've read. But, man, that motherfucker could act. And I thought, he wrote that Indianapolis speech. He commanded the screen every time he spoke, even when he was being a jerk. And, that's what I love about this character. I don't think it's possible to do a better job than he did on this movie. What do you think?
I have to agree 100%. This character is legendary, and I agree with you. I think the best scene I honestly would say one of the best scenes in film history, not just horror film history, is the scene on the boat with those three actors. Just absolutely, oh my God, the stories and the humor and the song and the showing me the way to go home.
Right.
I mean, everything about it is just classic, and everything about it's legendary. It's just a perfect scene. It is the perfect scene, and I agree with you. I always feel like I'm the fourth member on that crew,
Right.
like, and that's what when I'm watching the movie, I could be the fourth member of that crew and watching on this kind of, them talking about life and women and hardships and whatnot, and it's like Robert Shaw was just such a perfect foil in that movie, because you had Dreyfuss, who was kind of the smart one, you had Shaw, who was kind of the fearless badass one, and then you had Roy Schneider, who was kind of, I feel like he was kind of the sympathetic one, the vulnerable one, I guess would be a good way to put it.
Right.
And these three really worked together really, really well, because Roy Schneider didn't have to carry this movie on his own, even though he was the lead. The other two characters are just so much more interesting, and I like their interactions a lot, even though I believe they didn't like each other offset.
Right.
Is some of the stuff I've read. Is that true?
Well, I'm sure the story gets a little twisted at this point, so many years later, but Richard Dreyfuss kind of plays it off and acts like they were buddy, but off screen, because he says they spent a lot of time together, without anybody else around, supposedly, where they would drink and talk and things like that. And I can't tell you that, who Graham Norton is. He's kind of the late night talk show host in England.
Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss was on there one day, and the granddaughter of Robert Shaw showed up before they started filming. And he asked, because she wanted to meet him, and he wanted to meet her, I guess. And he broke down in tears. So, I don't know. I'm sure that there's maybe some regret there, maybe because they didn't get along so great, and and he's gone now. Obviously, Robert Shaw died in like 1978. So I don't know. There's a lot of stories behind it, but I guess your guess is as good as mine whether or not they got along.
Yeah, totally. I got you. But I think those two had a really good. I think they clicked real well. I think Dreyfuss and Shaw were really, really good together. And I just think that whole this scene with the chalkboard and that sound always gets me. I don't know about you, but like if you scratch a chalkboard, you'll get me to like jump. I don't know what it is. that sound. I can't stand that sound. Oh, yeah. Sometimes when my mom's cleaning the dishes and she's like scrubbing a pot or a pan, and she'll make that sound, and I'll just go, it's
right.
Just the worst. But that's the perfect introduction to his character. It's like this guy is that screeching sound on the chalkboard, and it's just he's eerie and he's deep, but I think he's also just such a cool character. And I don't know why I always get sad when he goes. Like he usually I want to see all three guys live. It's like probably one of the only horror movies where I didn't want to see any of them die. Like, I just didn't.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Totally. 100%.
Too likable for them all to die.
Exactly. Like I said, the most likable jerk maybe of all time in that movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, no doubt. So, anyways, let's go ahead and move on, I guess. Obviously, we've said a ton about Robert Shaw. I personally have said probably way too much. I just love the character. So let's just go ahead and move on to your number 2.
All right, my number 2 is the reason that I went ahead and tried to make this list, and it's probably the reason for these 2 episodes, because this is the reason I thought of making the list.
Right.
It is David A. Hess in The Last House on the Left.
Nice.
I don't know if you have a clip for it or anything.
I don't, not readily available. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know after the last couple that you had clips ready, so I was just, I had the slow, pause moment, but I'll send you something of a clip to put in.
Sure.
If you want.
Absolutely.
But when you're talking about David Hess as Krug from The Last House on the Left, Wes Craven's The Last House on the Left, I just immediately am enamored, because I think this performance was absolutely amazing. And I mean, everybody probably knows the story of Last House on the Left, of these 4 convicts that kind of take captive these 2 girls, and they take them in the middle of the woods, and they make them have sex with each other. They make them piss themselves. They gut one, stab one to death, and they rape one to the point where she just basically gives up on her life and they blow her head off. And it's just it's a very hardcore movie, and it really is like the rape revenge movie. But what I've always liked about it is David A. Hess as Krug, because I think in a lot of ways his role could have been portrayed and acted as over the top. A lot of people could have been over the top with it, took it too far to a point where it was cartoony, to a point where it didn't feel as gritty and real as an exploitation rape revenge film should feel.
Right.
But David Hess perfectly plays this role. I mean, he nails it because he's never over the top with it. Right. He's super subtle. But he's also so menacing in his performance. There's parts where towards the end of the movie where he's talking to Mr. Hollingwood about how he raped his daughter, and Mr. Hollingwood punches him right in the face, and he just goes, "Ooh!" He goes, "Man, that might be just as good as Sadie." And then he punches him again, and then he looks at him. He goes, "Oh, come on, Doc, your daughter put up a better fight than this." And I just, it's just. That is some sick
brutal
shit to say to somebody.
Really
like
is.
that's
Yeah.
that is. Oh my God, man! It's just super. Like what? This guy is absolutely the most hardcore, guy ever.
Right.
And he's literally just taunting this guy and he's on, he's taunting a guy on his own home turf. And I just love how some of the interactions between him and his son, where his son needs the heroin fix or whatever,
right,
and there's a point where the son tries to finally stand up to him, and he points the gun at him, and then David Hess kind of looks at him and just like kind of squints and goes, "What are you gonna do with that gun? Do you even know what to do with that gun?" He goes, "I want you to take the gun. I want you to shoot my head off." And then and he's like, "I'll do it, Krug." And he's like, "All right, you want to do it?" He says, "Why don't you stick the gun in your mouth and shoot your head out? Shoot your head off." He's like, "Blow your brains out, blow your brains out." And then boom, you just hear a boom. And then David Hess kind of blinks and looks away because he knows his own pride and joy has just shot his own head off.
Right.
And then he just kind of looks back, and it's just, I don't know. I love his performance in this movie. I think, and a lot of the music, I know a lot of people hate the music, but I've always really, really liked his music. After the Day Glows. I mean, there's a lot of really good music in this film. Now You're All Alone. And I've always liked one of the final shots of the movie after Krug has come face to face with the chainsaw. You see his hand is kind of like clenched, and there's blood all over his white T-shirt. And he's just kind of lying on the ground. You don't see his face. You don't see what happened or where he got chainsawed at.
Right.
But it's just the perfect demise for that character. It's that, he went out clenching his fist, man. He went out a fighter. And even though as despicable and as cruel and as evil as he was, there's that great scene which we talked about on our top 5 horror movie scenes, where after he rapes Mary Collingwood,
right,
he feels a little bit of remorse. He feels a little bit of regret. And that makes him human, and that makes him real, and that makes him gritty. The fact that he didn't just laugh it off and be over the top with it, it's the fact that he felt sick to his own stomach about something that he did. And that is the most realistic thing I could think of in any horror film. I think David A. Hess's performance, it easily could be my number 1. I went with someone else who I feel is maybe slightly a little bit scarier for my number 1 spot, but I think David Hess is absolutely perfection at number 2 as Krug in Last House on the Left. But what did you think about that, Don Nice?
Yeah, this character is something else, and I think that the arc of this character, you were talking about, at the very beginning when you first meet him, he's obviously, he's the big heavy, and there's a point where after the rape, like you said, there's kind of there's a bit, just a peek at humanity from him. And my problem, and I shouldn't say problem, my conflict in this movie is that this movie's very gritty and dirty and makes you feel like you need to take a shower afterwards. We've talked about that before. But the problem, or the conflict I have with this is I wanted him to be that guy. And you know what I mean? But what a shitty movie that would have made, right? So,
oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So at the end, when he's saying the things that he's saying, like you were talking about, your daughter fought better than that, or how, I don't remember exactly. You just thought, oh my God. And what it is the thing about it is this is another real character. There are people like this out there. You know what I mean? Where one minute they got their arm around you and you're drinking a beer together and having a good time, and the next minute they could be, cutting you or something. You know what I mean? And I think that's real. This movie reminds me of New York City in the 70s. You know what I mean? Where you didn't know from one night to the next what you were going to get. One night, you could live in the city and walk down the street and be fine, and the next night, you could, really bad things could happen to you. So that's how I feel about this character. I felt like I thought, we were seeing a glimpse of maybe he was coming around, but damn it if he didn't mess that shit up, and you know what I mean, by the end of that movie. So I didn't think about this character until you brought him up, whether or not he should be on this list. But I think it's a fantastic pick because it's a very, very it's a very underrated movie. People just think about the issues, the rape and all. They think about that. They don't actually look at the movie itself. And this character is very underrated because David Hess should have been a fucking star, in my opinion.
I agree.
You know what I mean? House at the Edge of the Park was another fantastic movie where he could have been the bad guy of the late 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? The bad guy. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So he was very underutilized, and he chose probably because, and maybe he didn't get a lot of roles because of this movie. I don't know what the deal was, but he did a lot of overseas films, like House at the Edge of the Park. So, I think he was very underrated. I think he should have been utilized a lot more. But unfortunately, it just didn't work that way. And now he's gone. He died in 2011, I think, right?
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. So, unfortunately, another guy, we won't get to see much more from. And wasn't he had one of his songs in the Hateful Eight recently, didn't he?
Yeah, he had the Now You're All Alone.
Yeah.
is in. There's a part of the Hateful Eight where they kill all these people in the haberdashery, and this one guy is like crawling away because he's been shot in kind of the stomach. And he's trying to crawl away. He's like, please, please. And they play the song over the scene. Yeah. And I remember when I first saw that, I was like, oh, my God, this is like, I was so happy. I was like, yo, Tarantino knows that I would appreciate this.
Right. Wrote it just for you.
It was one of those scenes where I was, as a fan, I was just like, boom. I was like, this is what I want to see in a movie. Like, that's how you pay homage to a movie,
Exactly. So, yeah, I totally agree with you, looking back. He deserves, and this movie in particular, he deserves to be on this list. So he very well could have been number 11 for me, but I just didn't think about it. I guess when you're racking your brain, you kind of forget movies, and that's one I forgot. So, but I guess do you want to talk about maybe our honorable mentions?
Yeah, we'll talk honorable mentions, and then I say we'll give like one guess as to what the number one is. Granted, I think my guess is going to go down the shitter now because I thought it was going to be Robert Shaw. So I'm going to have to come up with one on the fly. But yeah, go with your honorable mentions. I'll go with mine, and then we'll go with our guesses and then number ones.
Sure. I told you I originally had 21 names on this list that I had to kind of whittle down. So I won't get into too much detail. But I really had Donald Pleasance. He was number 11. Which he's on your list, so we'll just knock that out now. But next would have been Jason Miller as Father Karras from The Exorcist. I thought he was really underrated in that movie also. Fantastic job in that movie. And I know, Linda Blair kind of gets all the run, and she's actually on this list too. But I really liked his character better personally.
I agree.
Yeah. And Anthony Perkins was on my list, which he was on your top 10. And I really liked Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby. I thought she did a really good job as a very innocent straight-laced woman. Not to mention, back during Rosemary's Baby, she was unbelievably beautiful. And I had Michael Rooker, interestingly enough. He was on my list on my honorable mentions also for Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. And Jeff Goldblum from The Fly. Again, fantastic job. Fantastic movie. James Woods as Max Wren from Videodrome. Have you ever seen Videodrome?
I have him on my... Oh, man, he was my number 12.
Yeah, fantastic. And James Woods he's either really really over the top or he's really really good, and so I like watching him either way because I like over the top also.
I love him in that movie. I really really wanted to find a way to put him on my top 10 too. Like I fought for James Woods. Like I kept like knocking people off the list, and I was like, oh man, I can't put him above like Donald Pleasance or Anthony Perkins. So I had to stop there, but. Dude, I agree. I think that's a really great performance. Yeah. We should do that one day.
I was just going to say, if you're a fan of the movie, maybe we should just do the movie, man. No doubt.
We will. We'll do that down the road since he's an honorable mention on this list, but he's a very close honorable mention. He's easily, one of the few that just like one of the bubble boys. Cool. But yeah, we'll do Videodrome down the road, probably sooner rather than later.
Nice. That sounds good. And I had Christian Bale, which he was on your list. Keith Gordon as Archie Cunningham in Christine. Very underrated. And my last one is another combo. And it's Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman as Mills and Somerset from the movie Seven. I love that movie, and I love both of the jobs that they did in that movie. So that's my honorable mentions. What about you? What do you got?
I don't have as many honorable mentions here, but I had R.J. McCready from The Thing, which we talked about.
Right.
I had James Woods in Videodrome, which I think is really, really an underrated movie and an underrated performance.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Cronenberg effort. Really, really good movie. I have Bruce Campbell from Evil Dead, obviously Evil Dead 1, 2, and Army of Darkness.
Right, sure.
I have the killer from Intruder, because I always thought he was
Dan
fantastic
Hicks.
in those last couple scenes, man. That guy always I love that. There's just something so hokey about that I just love.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I'm just crazy about this story.
right.
Oh, it's just legendary, man. And my, let's see, I'm blanking on my list here. I had it on my phone, but my phone will not turn on today for some reason. I had it on for a little while, and now it won't turn on for some reason. But, I'm trying to think. Did I leave somebody out of my honorable mentions? All right, I don't know. I might have left somebody out. I'm kind of drawing a big blank. I apologize. But do you want to take a stab at who is my number one pick?
Well, now I'm conflicted because I had somebody in mind, but he was on your honorable mentions for a different movie.
Really?
I was thinking Kurt Russell as Stuntman Mike.
Oh my God! Oh shit, man!
Okay,
I'm a huge fan, but like I'll be honest, McCready. I got to put McCready over Stuntman.
All right, well that's cool. I definitely. So, oh man, I don't know, dude. Maybe Linda Blair. I'll go with Linda Blair. Let's just leave it at that, and we'll see where it goes from there.
It is not Miss Linda Blair,
damn.
even though I'm a big fan of The Exorcist, and I actually really like. We've never talked about this. Are you a big fan of Hell Night at all?
I am. You know, that's another movie that's really hard to find on DVD. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I don't
really
own
expensive.
it. I rented it way back in the day, and I have not seen it since, but I remember really liking it.
Nice, yeah. I also wanted to say somebody maybe from back in the day, like a Bela Lugosi or somebody like that. I don't know.
Well, it's definitely going to be a tough one to figure out. But all right, I'll take a stab at yours. But this is going to be completely. I don't know who the hell it's going to be because I thought it was. I would have bet my house that it was Robert Shaw.
3 of the curveball.
Man, yeah, you did. I would have lost my house had it been a betting man. Like that was how sure I was. Let's see who the hell. Man, oh man, I can't think. I'm drawing a complete blank. You're gonna have to just tell me. Well, I can't think of it.
Okay, I'll just tell you this. I dropped a hint in the first episode of this.
You dropped the hint in the first. Do you want to drop the hint again? I don't remember what the hint was.
Sure, you ready?
Go ahead.
Hi, Georgie.
Oh.
Aren't you gonna say hello? Oh, come on, bucko. Don't you want a balloon?
I'm not supposed to take stuff to the street.
So I won't bore you with the whole thing, but obviously my number one, if I had a drum roll, it would be Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise in the original It. Now, again, lots and lots of hate, okay? Lots and lots of hate for this movie. I don't know why. I don't understand it. But I can tell you, during this particular scene right here, I just watched it again, okay? I was getting a little heated on Facebook because people were hating so much, and I pulled this up on YouTube. You know, this particular scene that I let everybody listen to, and I watched, and I thought, that is some scary shit. I'm telling you, his facial expressions, the way I'm telling you, I probably watched it 4 or 5 times. I made my wife watch it once. I had each one of my kids come down and watch it and tell me if they thought it was scary, and they all went, "No, not really." I'm like, "You assholes." But I watched it, like I said, 4 or 5 times. And the more I watched it, the more I noticed, and I could not believe. I was scared. I'm 40-something years old, and I mean, it was like, damn, that is scary. The way he moved his lip as he talked. You know, I mean, go back and I wish I could show everybody right now. You know what I mean? I wish I could show everybody what I was talking about, because
get them all sit down, strap them to the chair.
Right, exactly. But I really, really thought it was scary, and I thought, you know, a lot of people think, you know, he was stupid, it was ridiculous, it was this and that. But what people have to understand is that he acted what was given to him. You know what I mean? And I thought, you know, I'm not a fan of. I have never read the book. I can't sit down and read whatever 1,200 pages or whatever it ends up being. I don't even know how many it is. But you know, so I don't have that in my head. You know, that, oh, it's not like this, it's not like that. But I'm dead serious when I tell you that I was blown out of the water at 44 years old watching this one particular scene by him again and remembering back to when it first came out, which I believe was 1990, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it's 1990.
Yeah, so, I mean, and I thought, you know, which I would have been, you know, 17 at the time, and I loved it then. You know, I don't understand where all the hate comes from. I thought he did a fantastic job. I think he's, as this character, is super, super underrated. And anybody who shits on this, and I'm around, is going to get a knockdown, drag-out fight about it, because I totally disagree. What about you? I believe you're a fan of the character.
Oh, I'm a big fan. I've always liked it a lot. I think we talked about in the last episode briefly that I do like the first half a lot more than the second half.
Sure.
And I will be. I think I'm going to be rewatching that one very, very soon.
Yeah, I already
because of this remake coming out. That's what I didn't know that was a hint. I thought that was because I remember last week you were like, "Oh, that's in honor of the the new remake of it coming out." So I didn't know that was a hint for this. I thought that was completely unrelated. So that was quite a curveball, as you know they say. That was you threw me off completely.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed this in a million years, actually, even though you did drop the subtle hint.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Tim Curry is just a fantastic actor. I mean, it's a shame. Did he do many more horror movies other than this? And you know,
I don't believe so.
There's one more. I'm blanking on. I'm sorry, I'm blanking today. It's the day of blanks.
That's
but was he in any other like genre films?
Well, he did like Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That's the one that stands out.
Clue. Which I don't know if you've ever seen Clue. I love Clue. I really, really love that. You know, so he did some memorable things, but I don't think anything as horror related, you know, as this was for sure.
I think this role was kind of perfect for him,
yes.
And I don't know. I think the new guy's playing him is Peter Skarsgård or whatever I think his name is.
Yep.
I don't know if he's going to be. I think honestly, a lot of it rides on his performance. And from what I could see, it looks like he's trying to play the scary clown, like the uber serious scary clown.
Right.
But what was so great about Pennywise was how, you know, creepy and pedophilish at times he felt.
Right.
Even though, I mean, it's not nothing like that really. You know, I'm not spoiling anything here.
Sure.
Nothing like that really happens, but it's certainly, I thought, suggested. What did you think?
Oh yeah, most certainly, and I think that's really what made, in my opinion, this movie well worth a watch. You know what I mean? Is that you just were never sure exactly what was going to happen. You know what I mean? And I think that, you know, you weren't sure if it was gonna, you know, he's gonna eat him or he was. I don't want to say have sex with him, but I mean, you know where I'm coming from, and I think
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It feels very implied, doesn't it?
Sure does. Well, don't you think clowns in general? I mean, even like circus clowns, real circus clowns, it's kind of kind of creepy. You know what I mean? They have this weird, and I'm not, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm just saying they just have a weird relationship with kids, and there's, kids and kids. A lot of kids don't find them funny or interesting. They just find them scary. You know what I mean? So yeah,
if you're looking at it black and white, I mean, think about it. You have a small child that's yours, and you have a man that is dressed with white face paint, a red nose, and a colorful outfit come up to him and be like, "You want to be my friend?" And
you want a balloon, or you want a piece of candy?
Yeah, dude, it's super, like, clowns are just pedophilish to begin with.
The only thing missing is the white van, right?
Yeah.
No doubt.
Instead of a white van, they have a small clown car that they can fit about 11 people into,
right.
Which is even creepier now that I think about it.
Exactly.
You could fit a bunch of victims in there.
No doubt.
Shit, man, this is getting morbid.
Yeah, it is. It's getting a little weird.
Definitely. But I totally agree. It's one of those things. It's like, I think clowns are the scariest. Like, they're super scary. And they're too friendly. I think that's the thing. They're friendly. They seem friendly at first. And
right.
Come here, Georgie. I want to give you a present.
Right.
And, like, it's just only Tim Curry, man. I don't think this Skarsgård guy can light a candle to how good, Mr. Tim Curry was in this film. And I think it's really a different number one, but I think it's a really good number one. And my number one's very different as well. But I think Tim Curry is more than deserving of being on this list. I think that's a really good choice.
Cool, man. Well, let's move on, man. Drum roll, please.
Oh yeah, drum roll, please. Okay, into my number one pick. Again, this is going to be a little bit of curveball too. I don't think it's not an easy one to guess,
all right,
but it is, in my opinion, the most real feeling and scary horror movie performance of all time, and it is Edwin Neal in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
All right.
Yeah, I curveballed you, right? Did I get it past you?
Yeah, no doubt. Oh yeah, absolutely. Swing and a miss.
I struck him out. Edwin Neal in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is my favorite horror movie performance for a few reasons, and it really the primary reason being he's just so scary in this movie, in my opinion. From day one, when I first saw this movie, I remember when that opening scene, they're driving along the road, and hitchhiker, should we pick him up? And they pick up Mr. Edwin Neal, and he gets in the car, and just insanity ensues from there. It's the most awkward, weird, it's uncomfortable. It's as uncomfortable as scenes get. Because you can tell that they were very skeptical in picking him up. And you can see at first he's trying to be friendly, but you can also see how weird he is. And there's certain things where they're talking about how the cows died in the slaughterhouse. And he says, "Oh, don't they use that big air gun now?" He goes, "Nah." He goes, "They died better with the sludge. They died better that way." And, like, I remember always being like, what a sick bastard, man. This guy is like, he wanted the cows to suffer. Yeah. He wanted them to suffer before they died, and he got to eat them.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, only a few villains in history can be that cruel and that sick. But I think Edwin Neal as the hitchhiker really does a good job here. And I like that, he takes a picture of him, and he goes, you can pay me now. This is a good picture. And it's like, fuck no. He's like, Franklin, give him the picture back. And he gives him it back. And then he cuts himself. He cuts poor Franklin and makes a kind of a symbol on the car and does his dance. And you don't see him for a while after that. Mm-hmm. He's kind of out of the picture until towards the end with Marilyn Burns. And they have that kind of sack over her head. And then he's the one that takes it off. And as soon as their eyes meet and her mouth is covered, she just starts screaming and her eyes get wider. And then he starts laughing he's like, "Hey," he's like, "You remember me?" And it's like, oh my God, it scares me so bad. Like, every time I watch it, I really get kind of freaked out watching it. He just really unsettles me. It's so uneasy. And the dinner scene, obviously, of they're taunting her, and they talk about Grandpa. Grandpa was the best killer and killed 100 in an hour, 5 minutes. Would have killed more if they got the bees out of the way faster.
Right.
I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, I could literally recite the entire movie, I think. Like, I could do any character, because it's just probably one of the most memorable movies for me ever. And I just love Edwin Neal. I love that final scene when he's cutting the back of her up, and I always put it in my brain that he could catch up to her, he could catch her, he could stop her, but it's the enjoyment of making her suffer.
Oh yeah, no
It's
doubt.
just like Freddy Krueger, what we were talking about in that last episode, buttering her up. It's sick, but it's phenomenally, effective, and it's very scary. But what do you think about Mr. Edwin Neal in Texas Chainsaw?
Well, as you're talking, I find that it's kind of ironic that my number one and your number one, they kind of have a connection. And let me bear with me one second while I go through this. And first of all, I want to say I'm not attempting to offend anyone. Okay, I just want somebody to know that. I grew up with an aunt who was she was a special needs teacher. Okay, now when I was a kid, it was retarded kids. Okay, so if anybody's offended by that, I apologize, but that's what I'm going to say from now on. So I dealt a lot. I was there a lot with these kids, and they had this, people with Down syndrome or some type of mental retardation, they have this thing about them where they don't really care what you think, and that's what this character reminds me of. He reminds me of someone that has a special need. You know what I'm saying? And he just wants you to be interested in whatever he's saying. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I felt about that scene in the van. You know what I mean? He wanted to talk about killing animals, and it was kind of a different thing, I guess. But a scary thing. But he thought you should be just as interested as he was in something like that. And talking about the issues that they have is you're talking about the scene where they sit down at dinner. And all the crazy shit, all the yelling and screaming, and they're taunting her, and he's, hopping up and down his seat, clapping, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. It's so, and I have to be honest with you, a lot of people are afraid of people like that. You know what I mean? Because they're unpredictable. You know what I mean?
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. Let me give you an example. This happened years ago when my boys were just little. We were sitting at a Wendy's, and there was a girl there with the lady who took care of her caretaker, and they were done dinner, and they were throwing their stuff away, and they were getting ready to walk out the door. Well, we were sitting by the table next to the door, and this girl, the lady didn't have a whole lot of control on this girl. And she came up and she started messing with our hats. Now, I notoriously wear a hat everywhere. My Dodger hat, by the way, just FYI. Did you hear about Rich Hill last night?
I watched the game from the 7th inning on.
Stabbed me in the friggin' eye, bro. Anyways.
Dude, I could not believe that has got to be one of the most brutal losses if you're a pitcher.
Yeah.
And he honestly should have been perfect through 9.
Right.
Yep. I forget who the third
Logan
baseman was.
Forsythe.
You got to make that play,
Yeah,
man.
know,
That's
right?
a perfect aim right there.
Anyways, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off track.
It's okay.
But we notorious. I always wear hats somewhere. My kids were wearing hats, and this girl started messing with my kids' hats. Well, you should have seen the look on my kids' face. They had never up to this point dealt, because they were still pretty young, dealt with someone like that. And it was something that I dealt with as a kid, so it wasn't a big deal to me. But she started to take their hats off and touch their heads, and so even to this day, they're still a little weirded out by people like that. You try to tell them, hey, it's no big deal, but I think that's what makes this character specifically so scary, I guess you could put it, is that it's a very unpredictable character, and like you said, he took a lot of enjoyment in torturing, and I think they all did, but they showed him more, like he was running after her, slicing her back, so yeah, this character is definitely weird and wacky, but again, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just one of those perfect storms of a situation and a time when it just worked. You know what I mean? And I think that this character, he just adds to that. So I agree with you. This is a weird and wild character, and if you have any inclinations to be weirded out by people with special needs, this character is going to do it for sure. It's kind of like clowns, you know what I mean? If you're scared of clowns,
most definitely.
Yeah. So yeah,
the connection for sure. Yeah. I think two different number one picks. I don't know if a lot of people would have had these two at even on the top 10 list. I don't know, but it was nice I think it was cool that we didn't just both go with like Nicholson at number one or Kathy Bates at number one. I think it was cool that we kind of threw curveballs to people for a little bit. So it was kind of cool to hear that. I didn't think Pennywise, and I'm sure you didn't think Edward Neal.
No, I didn't. But you know what's cool is that's what scared you, and you know it's what scared us. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why we went. You know, and it may be different for a lot of people. You know, I think you got to throw your Kathy Bates and Nicholsons in there because they are really worthy. But it's really what boils down to for me is what scares me. You know what I'm saying? So for for the situation, I know Jaws is a different type of scary, so, and I love Robert Shaw, but Tim Curry for me I think it just scared the shit out of me, so I had to put him at number one. Plus, he gets a lot of hate, and I don't think he deserves that hate. Now, we may get some hate for both of our number one picks, but we're down to listen, right? I'm down to listen to what people have to say.
If anybody has their own top 10, totally in the comments section or email or whatever, wherever you can get into contact with us on the Facebook page. I would love to hear, somebody else's top 10. Would we have a lot in common? I was surprised to that you and I only had 2 in common.
Yeah.
I was thinking we were going to have a lot more, but I thought it was interesting. It would seem like ones that I made the list for me were just an honorable mention for you. You know what I mean? It was. We thought of a lot of the same people, but not all of them made the top 10.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to put their list out there, we'll read it online and we'll give you some credit.
Totally. Yeah, we could if they want, we could read it on the show next week.
Sure, no doubt. Well, awesome, man. Well, I guess that's it. That ends another episode. I really like doing these list things. What about you?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
I think we should do more.
Yeah,
the only question is, what will we do next?
Yeah, well, we'll definitely figure it out. Well, it kind of just hit you as just inspiration to you out of the blue. So maybe we'll have something like that again. You know what I mean? That I think it works. You know what I mean? I think that that's pretty good. Maybe we should. I don't know. I'm sure there's lists out there on IMDb. We could kind of do the same thing. But we'll throw them in every once in a while. Movies here, lists there. We'll kind of go from there. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. I'm not sure if Will is wanting to be on again, and I know Erica wants to be on again, so maybe we can figure something out where we can get them together. Maybe it'll have to be, in a week or two, when school kind of chills out for you a little bit. But we'll figure it out, brother. All right.
You got it, my man. Sounds great.
All right, brother. Well, I will catch you on the flip side, and everybody stay scared.
Great talk to you, man.
Peace.
Catch you on the flip side.
Yep.
Peace.